We have joining us, as I mentioned at the start of the show, we have author, filmmaker Joel Gilbert joining us. This is his book. I want to show you this book. It's called The Trayvon Hoax. You may realize that last week in the show, we played a trailer from this. It's a book called The Trayvon Hoax, and also a movie, a documentary film that aired last week, and it is getting a lot of great attention. And I guess we're going to start, if we have the very wonderful Matt, the producer. We have a little clip just to remind you what we played last week, and then we'll be talking directly, and I'm so excited to have him, with Joel Gilbert.
My message is to the parents of Trayvon Martin. You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon.
The shooting death of Trayvon Martin was ground zero for racial division in America.
Trayvon Martin was killed for wearing a hoodie. Quite frankly.
I decided to produce a film on how the case affects American politics to this day. It had started as a self-defense case, but then, out of the blue, they found Trayvon's girlfriend.
She is a minor child.
This phone witness led to the most racially divisive trial since O.J. The girlfriend had written Trayvon's mother a letter.
I put it in a box.
Did you sign it at the bottom?
Yes.
What name did you use?
Diamond Eugene.
My investigation started with Trayvon's 750-page cell phone records. I made a shocking discovery. Trayvon did have a girlfriend named Diamond Eugene, but she wasn't the witness at the trial. To understand what really happened, I knew I had to find the real Diamond. I found a tape where Rachel confessed to prosecutors.
Real guilty.
Why do you feel real guilty?
I ain't know about it. Huh? I ain't know about it.
And then, finally, I found Trayvon's real girlfriend, Diamond Eugene. I was then able to reconstruct the shocking story of what really happened the month before and after the shooting. I used forensic handwriting analysis and even DNA to confirm what I had uncovered.
Okay, I honestly don't want to take much more time to complete that trailer because I'm so excited we have joining us the author of the book and director of the documentary film, Joel Gilbert. Very quickly, he's a filmmaker based in Los Angeles. He's a political commentator, foreign policy and analyst, and he displayed this film and released his book last week, and it is changing the national conversation about what happened in the Trayvon Martin trial that really had profound political implications in America. So first, welcome, Joel Gilbert. Nice to have you.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I want to just jump right in with our questions. So you listeners heard in the trailer that the main witness in this prosecution was this young girl who was saying that she was the one on the phone with Trayvon at the time of this incident involving George Zimmerman and ultimately leading to Trayvon being shot. But the person we all watched on national television as the girlfriend was not really the girlfriend. She was an actress. She was somebody that the Trayvon's family lawyer apparently located, or someone located, to have her act as that. So let me just start with this. Please, Joel, to start with in this case, isn't it accurate that before the girlfriend was located, the prosecutors were pretty much down the path of concluding that the prosecution was not justified because all the facts seemed to stack up in favor of George Zimmerman's depiction of what happened? Isn't that right?
Yeah, let me kind of reset it for your audience. People remember Trayvon Martin tragically was killed in an incident February 26, 2012. The Sanford police investigated for 2 weeks. They looked at the 911 tapes, physical evidence, eyewitnesses, and they came up with a conclusion after 2 weeks it's self-defense. It was not stand your ground, self-defense. The family attorney, Benjamin Crump, a week later has a press conference. He holds up a digital recorder and he says, I just found Trayvon's girlfriend who was on the phone with him last night. We found her last night. She did an audio recording. Her name is Diamond Eugene. She's 16 years old. And he played a few excerpts that were kind of unintelligible, but that was enough for the media to jump on board. Obama said, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. LeBron James comes on board. And the prosecution, state of Florida, is pressured into appointing a special prosecutor. So the special prosecutor, 2 weeks later, comes to Miami from Jacksonville to interview Diamond Eugene. And Rachel, they go to Diamond Eugene's house. I got the address from unredacted documents, and she sent away, the prosecution sent to a different house, and Rachel Gentel is there, and she says, "Hi, I'm 18, I'm Rachel Gentel, but Diamond Eugene is my nickname, and I lied about my age, and I lied about my name." And she gives this ridiculous interview that she doesn't really know anything. And at the end, she confesses. She's overwhelmed. You saw in the trailer, she tells the prosecutor, "I didn't know about it." And they ignore that, and only based on Rachel's few statements in this interview, they indict Zimmerman. A year later, of course, she shows up in court, and it's a disaster. She can't read. She doesn't remember anything. Her stories keep changing. So in this film, I actually go and I find Diamond Eugene. I find the real phone witness, and I call this the Trayvon hoax because it's the story of how a legitimate phone witness, that's the Trayvon hoax, was switched for a fake witness. And I also say the Trayvon hoax is the trick, the hoax the media plays on black Americans every day to convince them that there are armed white men in the streets looking to harm black people because of their skin color, and therefore they must seek shelter on the left and vote Democrat. So that's two ways you can look at the Trayvon hoax. But the bigger picture is that this case was ground zero for fake news, for race hoaxes, for fake witnesses. We saw that in the Kavanaugh hearing. All the strife, Ferguson effect, Freddie Gray, all the division in the country started right here in 2012. Before that, both blacks and whites considered race relations as positive. It has been negative ever since. So I'm hoping when people see this film and book, and so far so good, had a lot of great feedback. They're like, wow, this was a hoax. Everything that's happened in the past 5 years, all this racial division, complete nonsense, never should have happened.
Wow, that was a great summary. Thank you so much. That was just a great summary. Knocked out my next 5 questions, but that's okay. I have more of them.
Okay.
So, first of all, I love it. I love that you did this. I love you took
Yeah.
the time to go on the ground to figure out this story. And you didn't, by the way, set out to do this film with any suspicion about this witness. Is that right?
Well, I initially was really fascinated by Andrew Gillum, who almost won the governorship of Florida. And it was right after Jay-Z had produced a 6-part documentary on the Zimmerman trial, which was very incendiary. And I recall looking at it that the voice of the girlfriend that that the family attorney played for the press was very different than the voice of the girl that showed up in court. And that really set me thinking, you know what? That's not the same person. I mean, even people that looked at the trial 6 years ago were saying, wait a minute, this girl's 150 pounds heavier than Trayvon. She's a year older. I don't think that's his girlfriend. They didn't really believe it. But I got Trayvon's cell phone record, 750 pages, 3,000 text messages, 3,000 contacts. And there she is, Diamond Eugene. She's texting Trayvon photos of herself. It's not Rachel Gentel. So I had to go to Miami actually to go to all the high schools and get the yearbooks to really find her because Diamond was a middle name. And once I found her, I got in her social media. She's tweeting every 20 minutes. Even right when Trayvon was shot, she was tweeting. So the whole story is there. And the bigger question is the corruption also of the court system. How could the prosecutors who had all this information I had for a year, all the investigators, subpoena powers, how could they not have known? Now, you look also, I document in the film that in the book, prosecutors withheld evidence from the defense till just before the trial. They lied to the defense. They said, oh, Rachel's only 16. You can't talk to her till right before the trial. By then she was 19. You know, defense had to spend 2/3 of their time in court just imposing sanctions to force the prosecution to give them the evidence they had a right to have. So I think it does speak to a very big corruption of the judicial system that got caught up in this agenda really to elect Barack Obama, because the black vote was not certain for Obama in 2012. The economy had flatlined, illegals were coming in all the urban areas, taking jobs, driving down wages. Nothing had improved for the black community under Obama. So Obama sent his CRS, Community Relations Service, down to Sanford, Florida from the DOJ in Washington. They said, oh, we're going to investigate. But Judicial Watch pulled the documents. They really went down to incite and organize protests.
Yes.
So
right.
Obama was in on this. And when you look at the entire film, you say, wow, it was a really evil idea to use the tragic death of a black teen to put a Hispanic man in prison so we can control black voters. It was a very evil plan, and I think this project that I did really sets the record straight and exposes what went on.
Joel, it's a public service what you did. I swear, it's a public service for America, because you really are touching on all the ways in which this prosecution and this, fortunately the jury did not convict George Zimmerman, but if they had, he would be potentially sitting in jail because of a preposterous hoax really inflicted on him and on the American people. But I want to go back to the notion that this woman was not the real girlfriend of Trayvon. This Rachel Gentel, she was not really his girlfriend. Who beside the family attorney, Benjamin Crump, figured that out? I mean, did the prosecutor realize it? Did Zimmerman's attorneys realize it? Who figured this out? Why didn't the media figure it out? I think it's shocking and appalling that no one figured it out, or apparently.
There's several questions here. Look, it is shocking that 6 years later, an independent filmmaker like myself, I just go and read the public documents. I go on Twitter and Facebook, and I figure the whole thing out. Why didn't the media want to do that? It's because it didn't serve their fear-filled racial narrative. They didn't want to know. As far as, it's pretty hard to believe that the prosecution didn't know the way that they treated Rachel Gentel. At the first interview, she said, I lied about my name, I lied about my age, I lied about a hospitalization, and I didn't even know about it. And they still used some of her statements to indict Zimmerman. Now, why didn't they say, let's just stop this nonsense right here? Now, the one person we kind of have a smoking gun that absolutely knew about the witness switch was Trayvon's mother, Sabrina Fulton, who's now running for Miami-Dade commissioner.
Isn't
I think
that
she has
amazing?
a lot of explaining. She has a lot of explaining to do, because she didn't know beforehand, but right when it happened, she knew about the witness switch, and that's documented in the film. And she could have or should have come forward and stopped this trial and said that, no, I'm sorry, that's not Diamond Eugene. I found Diamond Eugene. I met her. She's in the movie. And the whole story, I just expose it. And it's just very shocking that no one chose to do this before. Now, certainly I get asked about, like you said, about Zimmerman's attorneys. I had spoken to them, and they only got Rachel's identity and talked to her 6 weeks before the trial. And though they knew there were a lot of problems here, they really had already prepared a self-defense. So they didn't know what to do, what to pursue. I really blame the prosecution for withholding so much evidence up to the last minute.
Oh, I do too. I'm a former lawyer, and honestly, if Zimmerman had been convicted, there would be reversible error just on the withholding of evidence. You can't force someone into a criminal prosecution defending themselves and withhold evidence. I think that's astonishing. But the other thing is, the larger impact on American society. The Black Lives Matter movement was really launched as a result of the Trayvon Martin killing, and the belief, the narrative put out there that there was just a witch hunt mentality around America. Black men can't feel safe, and the Black Lives Matter movement, in my view, has been extremely detrimental and divisive to our culture.
Right. I'll say, look, no one has suffered more from the Trayvon hoax than the black youth of America. Black Lives Matter, if you look on their website, they say we were founded because of the Trayvon Martin case. But if you look at their agenda on their website, their agenda is globalism, transgenderism, black villages, all this crazy nonsense that came out of the 1960s May 19 communist organization from these white liberals. It's all a white liberal agenda. And the Black Lives Matter kind of just using the concern or anger of black people over the Trayvon Martin case to get them into this agenda that doesn't have anything to do with their own interests. So much wrong has happened because of this case. Homicides are up 33%. It's been a crime disaster for the black communities around America because of the Ferguson effect. Everything started here at this case, where you could have fake news. Now we know fake witnesses. The media just goes along with it. And no one has suffered more than the black kids around America from this hoax.
Absolutely true. And the sense there's suffering on the part of black youths in America, if they really believe the agenda, the message of Black Lives Matter, that this is a country rife with racism and filled with police who hate young black people and will engage in unjustified violence, and white people who have racial hatred and will engage in unjustified violence, it has just this case and its outcome has just devastated America.
Right. Let me comment, which is Trayvon Martin was a good kid. I read all his text messages. I got to know him in the last 8 months of his life. He went into a downward spiral when his father divorced his stepmother, Alicia Stanley, and we even reveal in the film for the first time, Zimmerman's in the movie, George Zimmerman. He'd never been interviewed before. He didn't even testify at his own trial. And he said Trayvon asked him, please tell Mom Alicia I'm sorry. That tells a story right there.
After he'd been shot.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that was when Trayvon started a downward spiral where he got into fighting, acting out, gun dealing, and heavy marijuana use. And that led to his horrible decision to attack Zimmerman. But he wasn't the rocket scientist the media made him out to be. He was not a thug. He got in a downward spiral into fighting and showing off, and it was a terrible result. But his legacy was stolen by left-wing activists and the media for their agenda, for the agenda to get Obama reelected, to divide the country, to harvest black voters. Trayvon's true legacy is really a teachable moment. And the teachable moment is not that there are armed white men in the streets who want to shoot people because of their skin color. The real legacy is to understand that the lack of strong black men in the home to give guidance away from gangs and drugs, the absence of those strong black men in the home is what is wrong with the black community, not armed white men in the streets.
Amen. And actually, you're repeating or parroting some of the, not parroting, but you're also saying the same kind of arguments that Candace Owens was saying in Congress. I played her yesterday. She was testifying at a white supremacy hearing, just saying, mocking the Democrats, just saying the problem in our community is not this alleged rampant white supremacy. Yes, there's some of it, but basically it's not in our first 100 list of problems. The problem is fatherlessness, poor education, just attention from the family. One other thing I want to ask you, though, so all this you uncovered in the Trayvon hoax, what is it you think, how do we move past it as a culture, as a society? How do we fix it?
I think it's a great starting point. I mean, because most people remember they draw their racial narrative back to this. Race relations were all rated positive before 2012, before this incident, and it's been negative ever since. I grew up in Tennessee, East Tennessee, in the 80s, and black and white kids, we all grew up together from elementary school. I never heard the N-word in my life. And they want to tell us that, well, since 2012, suddenly America is now racist, so if you're black, you have to vote for Democrats to protect yourself. It is the dumbest, most insulting narrative. It's racist in itself.
Yes.
So I think this is a good starting point. I think Rachel Jeantel needs to come forward and admit what she told the prosecutors when they wouldn't listen. I ain't know about it. Diamond Eugene needs to come forward and tell what really happened in that incident, because she tried to disappear. After the incident, she tried not to come forward. I think it was because she knew a lot more, that likely Trayvon did intend to attack Zimmerman, and she didn't want to come forward to say that. She was forced to do a phone interview through a series of coercion and threats and phone calls from Trayvon's friends, pressure from the parents. And when she did finally do the phone call, she's 16 years old at the time. She just said, yes, Mr. Crump, yes, yes, yes. He was just getting some Skittles. He didn't do anything wrong. So she kind of just agreed with everything Crump said. And then, of course, she bailed out and Rachel Jeantel was substituted. Trayvon's mother knew about the substitution at that time when it happened. And she should come forward and let's have a healing. And once people can admit that this entire case where the race hoaxes started, fake news, fake witnesses, let's admit what really happened, that it was all total nonsense. And in America, there's only love. Americans are all brothers, black and white. We're all brothers in liberty. There's no racial strife, racial hatred, total nonsense. And it's the media and the politicians that have used Trayvon's tragic death, have used George Zimmerman to promote this evil narrative somehow that there's a racial division, that we have to be separate because of our skin tones. How dumb is that?
Very dumb is the answer. At the beginning of this show, I meant to recount, I want to take just 1 minute to do it for our listeners, and then I have one final question for you. What I meant to recount for our listeners, for those, everyone knows that Trayvon Martin recalls the prosecution, recalls that George Zimmerman was found not guilty, and that there was great anger at the outcome, at the verdict. There was an argument that there was justice wasn't done because Trayvon Martin's killer did not end up going to prison. And to be very clear about George Zimmerman, his story didn't change from the beginning. He was not following Trayvon Martin around inside and dark of the night in this housing complex. He did get out of his car because you wonder what it was. He thought his behavior initially was questionable, but it was really an aggression on Trayvon Martin's part toward George Zimmerman. Very quickly devolved into Trayvon Martin on top of George Zimmerman and banging his head into the cement. Point being, George Zimmerman did fear for his life. It was legitimate fear for his life, and he ended up using his own gun, which he could get to shoot Trayvon Martin in self-defense because he thought Trayvon was going to kill him. What I just recounted to you has been George Zimmerman's story all along. It was also the story of the one witness, I think it was at least, who opened a door in this apartment complex, opened a door and said, hey, knock it off, I'm calling the police, what's going on, or something like that. So I really want to get at, and I meant to review that in the beginning for those people who haven't really focused on this case recently, George Zimmerman's story didn't change. The prosecutors weren't even going to prosecute. So the consequence of this fake witness coming forward and filling in, doing whatever it was the prosecutor wanted to make the conviction or to make the case, had a profound impact on our country. It really had it caused the trial to go forward and really contributed to the massive outpouring of sympathy for his parents, Trayvon's parents, and anger at the justice system because she was willing to perpetuate the narrative that the family, I don't know if the family were cooked up, but at least that the defenders of Trayvon had cooked up. You want to correct anything about that before I get to my last question?
Well, there's a few things in there. Zimmerman is in the movie. You can really see he talks about his background. He's an Obama supporter, civil rights activist, Hispanic kid who speaks fluent Spanish. In his free time, he would spend his spare money taking black kids whose parents were in prison out to dinner and to play basketball because he said he wanted them to feel they were important. So they turned Zimmerman, who is a minority advocate and a minority himself, into something he wasn't, to shape this ridiculous narrative that they then used to divide the country.
I'm glad you added that. Yes, I meant to add that too. Okay, one last thing. So you showed this documentary film at the National Press Club last week. The book is out, the film is out. Do you think you're getting through to people? Are you changing people's minds? Oh yeah, I'm doing the same thing. I have my book right here too. That's right. Okay.
That's the movie right there.
And we have that at home. So are you hearing reaction? People are surprised and learning things and maybe changing the view of things?
Yeah, I mean, you can just look online. There are some movie reviews done by some African-American teenagers, and they're saying, everything I thought I knew about this case, I didn't know. And now I see we got played. I get emails from people, comments. A lot of black kids, they're saying, wow, we were raised on this. Yep. That somehow, there's white people want to hurt black people. And they realize they got played. America got played by this epic race hoax. And I have not had one negative comment. People are just saying, like, you really did your homework, you did the investigation, all the evidence is there. And Rachel Jeantel was a fake witness. The prosecution should have known or did know. And it created this terrible division for no reason. So far, I think people are really understanding and dialing into it. And they're getting pretty mad about what was done.
I love hearing that it is just grotesquely unjust what was done. And I think people are going to have that reaction more and more. We don't want to be lied to. We don't want to be played. We want our justice system to be fair. So Joel Gilbert, I want to commend you for the book and the movie and this mission to wake America up about what really happened in the Trayvon Martin prosecution. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
Okay, folks, this is the book. One last time, Joel Gilbert, The Trayvon Hoax. Cannot encourage you strongly enough. Get that book, read it, and then you can tell your friends to do the same thing. Be a good Christmas gift for your friends.